Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here today, and I have the Hayabusa. As you can see, thanks to MotoHUB in Castle Hill in Sydney, they've lent me the bike for the day, and yesterday I had the GSX-S1000. Now, I've got to say, as amazing as the Hayabusa was today, the GSX-S1000 was the most fun I've had in quite a while on a motorcycle, which is really saying something. And I thought I'd just do a very quick comparison between these two bikes, even though they are very disparate kind of options in the motorcycling world. And there's a big price difference. I think the GSX-S1000 is about $17,300, and this is just over $27,000. So in the Hayabusa, you're getting the much larger capacity. I think it's the 1340cc inline four. They're both inline fours. This thing is quite the pussycat down low, but an absolute weapon up top. And the pull that this thing has is absolutely insane. What I liked about the GSX-S though, which has, there's a bit of commonality between those engines, it was the simple fact that the torque on the GSX-S was very accessible, particularly kind of just revving out second and third gear, and I was able to have a lot of fun on that bike. And I would almost say the GSX-S was a little bit more thrilling of the two bikes. Now, both of these bikes handle like they're on rails. They've got a really exceptional feel and stability to them, very, very confidence inspiring. This bike here is most definitely the better handler of the two bikes when we're talking about that stability, and I would also say as far as the suspension performance. However, again, the GSX-S was absolutely incredible fun. It's a little bit more agile down low. It doesn't have quite the same level of stability, but the feedback and feel from that bike was just absolutely exceptional. So while they're pretty close between these two bikes, I thought just the fun factor of the GSX-S was again the winning factor for me between the two bikes. The seating position as well on this bike, being that little bit sportier, it's got an even shorter seat to peg ratio, and it's got these kind of clip-on style bars, even though they're quite raised. It's a more aggressive seating position. The benefit there was it's easier to lock into the bike, and also I would say I didn't need to move around on the bike anywhere near as much on this to really take advantage of the handling. But I think the GSX-S, the upright sitting position of the naked bike, was a real winning point for me. And one of the reasons for that was the simple fact that on the GSX-S, I felt like I was going faster at lower speeds. And as a result of that, while I was still having some fun going quick, on this, there are a lot of times where I was kind of looking down at the speedo and going, whoa, I'm doing 30 or 40 Ks faster than I thought I was doing. And I wasn't noticing because it's such a deceptively quick machine. And I mean, when something's designed to go 300 kilometers an hour, obviously doing 100 kilometers an hour or 120 is going to be no sweat whatsoever. And again, so you don't quite get that same level of feel of speed that you do on the GSX-S. Now, obviously that does mean that the GSX-S is a little bit more thrilling at lower speeds, where this reaches higher speeds much more easily and much more quickly, but they're both performance monsters, realistically speaking. Where this bike, I would say, excelled was that the up-spec Brembo setup on this was definitely better than on the GSX-S, and I wouldn't have minded a little bit more bite on the GSX-S, where on this I thought the brake setup was pretty much perfect. So there I would definitely say that the Hayabusa had the advantage, and I was really happy. Also, I guess the difference between the two, on the GSX-S, B mode I would say was the perfect mode, and the quick shifter on the GSX-S felt a little bit more refined and just did the job that little bit better. Where it was a little bit on the Hayabusa, it was a little bit clunkier, and while it still worked really, really well, I'd say probably there's some mechanical kind of underlying factors there with the Hayabusa gearbox, which may be why it felt quite different. But while they both worked, the GSX-S, as far as the quick shifter, definitely the winner, whereas the Hayabusa has a lot more electronics involved, and as you'd expect for a more expensive machine, it's got kind of the more premium dash. It's got a proper TFT alongside the clocks, where the GSX-S only has an LCD, and this has the fully adjustable suspension, where the GSX-S doesn't have the fully adjustable shock. I think styling on both of the machines is probably going to be a very subjective area. The GSX-S, the headlight is a bit of a, kind of a I guess, polarizing feature, I would say. Whereas on the Hayabusa, the whole bike is polarizing, whether you like this kind of very streamlined and almost bulbous look to the bike, which is all about that wind tunnel design so that this thing can hit 300 kilometers an hour. Now for me, being able to hit 300 kilometers an hour is really not a concern on a road bike, even though I can certainly see the appeal. And I think the GSX-S1000 being, I guess, the more road orientated would be my choice out of the two bikes, with the cheaper price tag certainly coming into that because I'm pretty cheap and I really like value for money, and the GSX-S certainly does that for me. Where the more expensive Hayabusa is an absolutely insane machine, perhaps more of a sports tourer than the GSX-S1000's kind of do everything style bike. And I just would find it a little bit harder to justify having one of these in the garage at the end of the day. I guess I would say I like the more restrained feel of the GSX-S, and being a little bit more road orientated, where this thing is really performance orientated, worked in the GSX-S's favor for me. So, you know, that's not going to be for everyone. And another point I will really note is the enormous exhausts on this. While they are the iconic Hayabusa look, they are some pretty big exhausts. It'd be really cool to replace them with something a little bit more streamlined and certainly lighter. I think really an exhaust note on the Hayabusa would be very much appreciated. On the GSX-S, the intake power was so good, I didn't feel like I needed the exhaust note, and having a much smaller exhaust was a definite boon there. I really did like the GSX-S as far as that note that you got from the engine, not from the exhaust, just from the engine. And while the Hayabusa had somewhat of a note there as well, it just didn't have it at quite the same level. Granted, if you really rev this thing out, it's still exceptional and it does still have a nice soundtrack to it, but the GSX-S I thought was just the winner there for just that kind of more enticing soundtrack, even at lower RPMs, which again, being really usable at the lower RPMs and being able to have a lot of fun at kind of lower speeds was a definite boon. The advantage of the Hayabusa was that while both of them handle absolutely amazingly, I was a little bit more, I guess, lazy on the Hayabusa as far as the handling characteristic, and there was so much kind of room to make corrections through corners and things like that. It was very, very forgiving. The GSX-S1000 was very forgiving as well, but maybe not at quite the same level as the Hayabusa, so a bit of a win there in that regard, in that kind of portion of the handling. So that's a quick look at the differences between these two bikes. While it is a very unusual comparison, I guess you'd say, I've had the two bikes kind of back to back across 2 days, and as a result of that, I thought I'd just give you my thoughts. Anyway, let me know what you think. Would you take a Hayabusa or the GSX-S1000? As always, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.